Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. The First Nation Leadership Council in BC is calling for accountability and a higher level of oversight after a Wet'suwet'en man was shot by RCMP in Campbell River last week. According to a police report, Jared Lowndes failed to stop for an outstanding warrant. RCMP vehicles boxed him in a parking lot. A confrontation with a police dog and officer left the service dog fatally stabbed and officer suffering knife wounds. Lowndes, a father of two, was shot and killed. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip condemned the use of police force and the media's coverage, which he says show both racism and discrimination.
Very angry about media portrayal that takes the side, so to speak, of the police dog. And there's more coverage of the what happened to the police dog than an Indigenous man being viciously attacked by the police dog and shot in the face by attending police officers.
Police in Brantford, Ontario and Six Nations are thanking the public today for sharing a photo that has led to the identification of a suspect who allegedly vandalized a memorial at the former Mohawk Institute residential school. A citizen tip led police to a 38-year-old Brantford woman who has been charged with mischief under $5,000. Responding to a question about why the woman was not charged with a hate crime, the Brantford Police Service said all avenues were considered, and based on information received during the investigation, the incident was not determined to be a hate crime. The woman has been released from police custody with a future court date. The Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Victoria has apologized after a First Nation in British Columbia said it found more than 160 unmarked graves at another residential school site. Bishop Gary Gordon says the diocese grieves for the victims of the residential school on Cooper Island, now called Penellicut Island, and apologizes for its role in its operation. He also says he's committed to the process of healing, reconciliation, and education regarding the tragic history. The Penellicut tribe on Vancouver Island announced the discovery earlier this week. Raymond Charlie is a survivor of the residential school and says as children they heard stories of atrocities, including the death of kids.
We really need to heal and we really need to move on, and we need some, I would always say, it's closure that we will look for, but that won't occur until we bring the children back home to their families and bury them properly and do it in a cultural way so that they're remembered and that they have graves that are marked.
This latest discovery follows the findings reported in May of potentially 216 unmarked graves at the former residential school in Kamloops, BC. The Tk'emlúps Band is expected to release a report on its findings tomorrow. And in this episode of Stories of Survival, APTN's Tina House meets with a woman who says she almost didn't survive while attending the Maryvale Residential School. Now, a warning, you may find the following content disturbing.
It's a beautiful sunrise in the Capel Valley, and longtime friends Debbie Delorme and Miranda Desjardins look at the view where the Cowessess First Nation is located. They've known each other since they were 5 years old and met while attending the Maryvale Residential School.
We walked from the day school that they built to go eat in the dorms in by the playroom there.
Yeah.
Debbie says she was really happy up until she was taken away to residential school.
Before I went to residential school, I lived with my mom and my like there was a whole bunch of us. My cousins, my younger sister, and my grandfather. It was beautiful. We lived by the lake, and my mom. I remember my mom making me a coat of many colors, and that's one of the things I treasure the most is, the love and the caring that I got from my mom.
It's taken years for Debbie Delorme to finally talk about her experience at the Maryvale Residential School. But now she says it's time for the truth to come out.
I remember being taken and wondering why, like, I had to go stay there. I cried and yeah, I was like, you know, at lost, like, you know, how come I'm going there and feeling like, you know, lonely and, you know, and crying for my mom and my mushroom, my grandfather, yeah, and for like crying for to be at home. I remember being wakened and taken out of the room, and then being sexually abused by the priest.
She says one of her vivid memories is when one of the nuns almost took her life by forcing her outside with no jacket in minus 40-degree weather.
The nuns almost froze me. I was forced to stay outside, and I remember like freezing and you know, just cold, and I ended up kind of like getting sick.
She was finally allowed back in after a few hours, but to this day, Debbie says she still feels numbness in her hands from the frostbite.
The residential school was like being in jail, you know, ripped away, taken away from your family, and, you know, taken away from the people who care for you, you know, and they didn't teach us love. They taught us fear and not how to express our love, or they taught us to be afraid.
At the age of 7, Debbie ran away from the school back to her grandpa and begged him not to take her back there.
I told my mushroom, I'll work hard, I'll help you. And yeah, he was fine with that, because I told him that they were going to do that to me again, like, you know, sexually bother me and, you know, hit me with stuff. And
Debbie DeLorme is a true survivor. She's been happily married since she was 19 years old, with 7 children, 34 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren. But it's taken her years to heal from her trauma.
I'd like the Canadians, like, you know, if that all the stories that they hear, you know, that the survivors are the ones that made it home, that, you know, it's not fake, it's real. You know, we suffered the pain, and we're lucky that some of us are here today, you know, to tell our story.
Tina House, APTN National News, Cowessess First Nation.
The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who might need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. We have to take a short break, but still to come, we'll have an update for you on the wildfires that are burning across the country. Welcome back. An editorial published on the RCMP Veterans Association website called for readers to move on from residential schools. That was followed up with an email from the Manitoba Association's president, and we heard from many Indigenous people who were outraged by the post, including former Mountie Marjorie Hudson. Brittany Guillot has more.
An opinion piece posted to the RCMP Veterans Association webpage outraged many people, including Grand Chief Jerry Daniels of the Southern Chiefs Organization, who spoke to APTN News this week.
Obviously, we're never really surprised of these sorts of comments from colonial institutions. I think that we were a little disheartened given the fact that multiple reports have came out stating that the RCMP is an institution that needs to be transformed and brought into the 21st century.
The article examines residential schools and Canada Day, titled, "My Canada, Is It Your Canada?" The article suggests to get on with life and move on from residential schools. That email encouraged members to read a book called From Truth Comes Reconciliation. Retired Mountie Bruce Pitt Payne shared the article and email with APTN News.
It was the write-up that stressed that this is for people with open minds that are willing to consider alternative perspectives. And that appeared to be a theme then in relation to the previous editorial, which is very revisionist, very reductive to the damage and even the objectives of the residential schools.
The Veterans Association sent us a statement saying the post was an editorial and not associated with the organization. The post is scrubbed from their website. APTN News spoke with Marjorie Hudson about the content. The former RCMP officer tells us why she thinks the comments are troubling.
With the residential school and the police, I think it runs parallel. Because we have to remember that the RCMP was part of the taking of the children.
Hudson filed a class action lawsuit last year alleging racism and sexism within the force. We reached out to the RCMP for comment, but didn't hear back before airtime. Brittany Guillot, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We want to hear what you think about the editorial published on the RCMP Veterans Association website. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and now TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and northwestern Ontario are fighting several out-of-control wildfires, and smoke from those fires is drifting to other provinces. APTN's Priscilla Wolf has the details.
In Saskatchewan, there are currently 137 wildfires burning. 3 of those are of concern. They're near the northern communities of Black Lake, Stanley Mission, and Dillon. No evacuation notices have been given for these communities yet. The northern community of Reindeer Lake was evacuated Sunday. Other communities are on standby to be evacuated to Prince Albert and Saskatoon. Over 300 wildfires are now burning in British Columbia. Evacuation orders have been given in the Kamloops area. 170 homes have been ordered evacuated by the Skeetsaten Indian Band. A warning for smoky skies has also been issued for the interior of BC, the Yukon, and Alberta. Priscilla Wolf, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
And due to the extreme fire hazard and increased forest fire activity, the Ontario government issued an emergency area order for all of northwestern Ontario. There are 71 active fires in the region, with 24 fires listed as not under control. Hundreds of people in northern First Nations have been evacuated. For more, we're joined by Ontario Regional Chief Glenn Hare. Regional Chief Hare, thanks for being with us. On Tuesday, more than 500 people from First Nations in Northern Ontario had been evacuated. What can you tell us about the situation today?
Well, again, we had a meeting earlier in the day with the government, and then at 3 o'clock, they were going into this meeting in regards to forest fires. So I don't know what came out of that meeting yesterday afternoon, but I already made arrangements. I'm going up on in a week's time to Thunder Bay and to meet with some leadership and see where things are at, and I want to be with them and help them whatever way I can.
Now, some had been calling on the province to declare a state of emergency. Now, Ontario has issued an emergency area order. Will that help the situation?
I certainly hope so. And, you know, I would wish and hope that the government would, you know, he's flying all over Canada right now. Now, I don't know if it's campaigning or not, but my God, he should be stopping in and checking in on us too, because it's just not business right now. You know, there's pandemics of all kinds, mental health, opioid crisis, the bodies that are being found, and now forest fires. Why is he running around handing out a whole bunch of ribbon cutting ceremonies and whatnot when we got crisis? We have crisis here. The First Nations, we've always did every year. You know, if he's saying we're going back to normalcy, well, he's certainly right on that one.
And Chief Hare, while we have you, the Ontario coroner is out with a report on understanding fire deaths in First Nations, and there were some grim statistics in it. What can you tell us about that report and how to move forward?
Well, again, we need to meet with the leadership of Ontario, the First Nation communities, especially in the far north where there's no safe drinking water and no water at all, period. You know, if they can work on and put lots of resources into trying to get pipelines to our communities in southern Ontario, surely they can go up there and put some water lines in place. It doesn't take a scientist, I don't think, to do that. It just takes resources and our government to be part of them and make that real. Them fire deaths, a lot of them should not be happening, and we all know that. And we don't need no studies either. We're studied out. Let's do something.
All right, Regional Chief Harrow, I want to thank you again for taking a few minutes out of your day to speak with us.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And now some election news. Arlen Dumas has been re-elected as the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Dumas defeated former Manitoba Kiiwetinoong Okamekanak Grand Chief Sheila North on the second ballot. Chiefs in Manitoba also elected Cindy Woodhouse as the new Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief for Manitoba. That role was vacated when former Regional Chief Kevin Hart ran for National Chief of the AFN. And Manitoba's Indigenous and Northern Affairs Minister has stepped down. The move comes after Premier Brian Pallister made controversial comments. This morning, Eileen Clark confirmed she would be stepping down as minister only 1 week after Brian Pallister's comments on colonialism surrounding 2 Queen statues toppled over on Canada Day. Pallister said last week in a conference colonizers came to Canada to build, not destroy, and said he stuck by those comments despite criticism from the community. This afternoon, Pallister said he would not comment on why Clark resigned.
Eileen has spoken about her priorities and reasons, and I expect she'll continue to as you ask her questions. I don't feel comfortable in telling you what Eileen thinks or what Eileen wants to say.
A student at Mount Royal University in Alberta is asking for a change to an Indigenous Studies course because one segment teaches about the positives of the residential school system. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
Bri Robertson is the daughter of a residential school survivor. Her mother went to a residential school in Inuvik, so she knows the damage caused by the schools. She just finished her first year of social work at Mount Royal University in Calgary. While taking the Introduction to Indigenous Studies course, she was given a worksheet by her professor, Barbara Barnes, that listed the positive and negative effects of residential schools. She says she was shocked that anyone would find any positives to find.
We know from the TRC that there were no positives from residential school. And people always, and even the fact that we call it residential school is there, it's intentional because the word school is in there. So people are allowed to say, oh, but they got an education, but that wasn't the purpose of the schools when they first opened them.
She emailed Barnes asking what she meant. Barnes, whose profile states that she is from the Six Nations of the Grand River in Ontario, sent Robertson this reply. It read in part, "Some positive is that the females learned to clean their houses so that diseases not take hold in the houses. They all learned English, which has helped them communicate, learning to make foods and clothes. Boys learned carpentry, taking care of gardens, etc." Robertson replies she was teaching misinformation. The professor replied and wrote in part, "If you think the positives deeper, you would realize that the resiliency and not giving up attitude is such a strength that all the res school survivors emanating is a very much positive." Robertson says she wants the course to stop teaching falsehoods about the residential schools.
And I hope all educators think differently about what they're going to teach about residential schools. And sometimes it's hard to teach the truth, but there's age-appropriate ways to do it, starting right from elementary school to university.
We asked the university to comment on Robertson's concerns. They told us Barnes is a contract instructor and we should speak to her. But they did release this statement, which reads in part, "Faculty members who deliver courses bring different experiences and approaches to the content. There is a process in place for students to formally voice their concerns." Barbara Barnes has not returned APTN's request for comment. Robertson says she is considering transferring to another university to finish her degree. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Our photo of the day is after the break, and also when we come back, a black bear was spotted roaming a Winnipeg neighborhood and found himself stuck in a tree. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Janice Gladish, a member of the Hailsook Nation, created a heart from driftwood and painted it orange to commemorate the discovery of unmarked graves. In this photo are Janice's grandchildren, descendants of her parents, who are residential school survivors. Thank you for sharing this with us, Janice. Send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. And now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting in the east, 24 degrees and rain in Charlottetown and 24 and sun in St. John's. 22 degrees in Nain and 27 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. 28 in a mix of sun and cloud in Quebec City and 31 in Montreal. 31 in a mix of sun and cloud in Toronto and 30 degrees in London. 17 degrees and rain in Timmins and 27 in sunshine in Sioux Lookout. 29 in sun and cloud in Churchill and 28 in Norway House. 30 in sunshine in Winnipeg and 30 in sunshine in Barons River. 34 and rain in Swift Current and 32 in a mix of sun and cloud in Yorkton. 26 in rain in Stony Rapids and 32 in La Ronge. Over in the west, 26 in rain in Fort McMurray and 25 in rain in Peace River. 33 in sunshine in Lethbridge and 30 in Edmonton. 22 in a mix of sun and cloud in Victoria and 26 in Quesnel. 19 degrees in Dease Lake and 25 in Prince George. 16 in a mix of sun and cloud in Old Crow and 20 degrees in Mayo. 26 and rain in Yellowknife and 11 in Norman Wells. 15 and sunshine in Fort McPherson and 9 in Colville Lake. 22 degrees in Baker Lake and 22 in Arviat. 16 and sunshine in Iqaluit and 11 degrees in Clyde River. A black bear was taken away to safety last night after it was seen wandering in a Winnipeg neighborhood. Area residents spotted the bear in a large tree. Surveillance video taken from a nearby home shows the bear wandering in the area before it wound up in the tree. Now, conservation officers tranquilized and caught the bear just after 9 o'clock. No one was injured, including the bear. I'm sure everyone was a bit tense in that situation, including the bear, but it's great news to hear that the bear was not injured. That's all we have for you tonight on APTN National News. For more news, you can visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Gerald Stranger. Have a great night.